The eviction notice was taped to my front door when I came back from the grocery store. Eviction. The word didn't make sense. This was my house. I had lived here for 43 years. I had raised my children in this house. My husband had died in the bedroom upstairs. Every corner held a memory. Every wall told a story. How could anyone evict me from my own home? But as I read the legal document with shaking hands, the truth became devastatingly clear. The bank owned my house now. They had owned it for 2 years, ever since I signed those reverse mortgage papers my son brought me. The papers he swore would help us both. The papers that were supposed to give me financial freedom in my retirement. Instead, they had given me this, a notice that I had 30 days to vacate the property I had called home for more than 4 decades. My name is Dorothy, and I'm 74 years old. My husband Frank and I bought this house in 1981 when our boys were small. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a good neighborhood with excellent schools. We stretched ourselves financially to afford it, but Frank said it was an investment in our children's future. He was right. Both our sons thrived here. Frank died of a heart attack 8 years ago. Sudden, devastating, final. One morning, he was drinking his coffee and reading the newspaper, and by evening he was gone. The grief nearly destroyed me, but I held on because this house held him. His workshop was still in the garage. His favorite chair sat in the living room. His presence was in every room. After Frank died, I lived on his pension and Social Security. It was tight, but I managed. The house was paid off. We had made that final payment 3 years before he passed. That felt like a triumph, a security I could count on. Whatever else happened, I would always have a roof over my head. My son David, my younger boy, had always been the one who struggled. His older brother Richard had gone to college, become an engineer, built a stable life. But David had bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always chasing the next big opportunity that never quite materialized. I loved him anyway. He was my son. You don't stop loving your children just because they make poor choices. 5 years ago, David came to me with what he called a life-changing opportunity. He had a business idea, a food truck specializing in gourmet sandwiches. He had done the research, created a business plan, found the perfect truck for sale. All he needed was capital, $60,000 to get started. He asked if I could help him. He promised he would pay me back within 2 years once the business took off. He said this was finally his chance to build something real, something stable. He looked at me with such hope, such desperation, that I couldn't say no. I didn't have $60,000. My savings were modest, barely enough for emergencies. But David had a solution. He had been researching reverse mortgages. He explained that because I was over 62 and owned my home outright, I could take out a reverse mortgage and access the equity in my house without having to make monthly payments. The loan wouldn't need to be repaid until I died or moved out of the house. He made it sound so simple. I could help him start his business, and it wouldn't cost me anything out of pocket. The house would still be mine. I could live here as long as I wanted. And when he paid me back, I could use that money to pay down the reverse mortgage balance. I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. Frank and I had worked so hard to pay off this house. Taking out a new loan, even one I didn't have to pay monthly, seemed like going backward. But David was persuasive. He said this was exactly what reverse mortgages were designed for, to help seniors access their home equity for important things. He said I would be helping him build a future while maintaining my own security. He said he had already spoken to a reverse mortgage specialist who could walk me through the process. I told him I needed to think about it. I wanted to talk to Richard to get his opinion. But David got upset. He said Richard had always looked down on him, always thought he was a failure. He said if I really loved him and believed in him, I would trust his judgment. He said this opportunity wouldn't wait. Someone else was interested in buying the food truck, and he needed to move quickly. That emotional manipulation worked. I didn't want David to think I didn't believe in him. I didn't want to be the mother who favored one son over the other. So I agreed. David brought the reverse mortgage specialist to my house 3 days later. The man's name was Greg, and he worked for a company called Premier Senior Lending. He had a briefcase full of documents and a laptop with colorful presentations. He spent 2 hours explaining how reverse mortgages worked. He told me I could borrow up to 60% of my home's value. My house was worth about $300,000, so I could access up to $180,000. For David's business, I would only need to take out $60,000 initially. The rest would remain available if I ever needed it for medical expenses or home repairs. Greg explained that I wouldn't have to make any monthly payments. The interest would accumulate and be added to the loan balance. The loan would only need to be repaid when I permanently moved out of the house or passed away. At that point, the house could be sold to repay the loan, or my heirs could pay off the balance and keep the house. He made it sound reasonable, even beneficial. He said many seniors used reverse mortgages to improve their quality of life in retirement. He said I was making a smart financial decision. What he didn't clearly explain, or what I didn't understand, was how quickly the loan balance would grow. With interest compounding monthly, that $60,000 loan would balloon over time. He mentioned interest rates, but the numbers didn't register. I was focused on helping David, not on complex financial calculations. I signed the papers. All of them. There were so many documents, disclosures, agreements, acknowledgements. Greg guided me through each one, pointing to where I needed to sign. David sat beside me, squeezing my hand, thanking me over and over. The money was disbursed 2 weeks later. I wrote David a check for $60,000. He hugged me, promised he would make me proud, swore he would pay me back within 2 years. That was 5 years ago. I never saw a penny of that money again. David's food truck business lasted 8 months. He claimed the location permits were too expensive, the competition was fierce, the profit margins too slim. He sold the truck at a loss and moved on to the next idea, a landscaping business that also failed within a year. I asked him about paying me back. He said he would, as soon as he got back on his feet. He said he just needed a little more time. But time kept passing, and David kept failing. He moved from one failed venture to another, always just on the verge of success, but never quite achieving it. He stopped visiting as often. When I called, he was always busy, always stressed, always just about to turn a corner that never came. Meanwhile, the reverse mortgage balance grew. I received quarterly statements from Premier Senior Lending showing the loan amount increasing. After the first year, the $60,000 had grown to $67,000. After 2 years, $75,000. The interest was compounding faster than I had understood. I called Greg to ask about it. He explained that this was normal, that the interest rate was fixed at 7.5% annually, and yes, it compounded monthly. He said as long as I continued to live in the house and kept up with property taxes and insurance, everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. The property taxes in my area had increased significantly. Insurance costs had gone up. Maintenance on a 40-year-old house was constant. I was spending more than my fixed income provided, and I was dipping into my meager savings to cover the gaps. I tried to talk to David about it. I explained that I needed him to start paying me back because I was struggling financially. He got defensive. He said he was doing the best he could, that I was putting too much pressure on him. He said if I hadn't agreed to help him in the first place, I wouldn't be in this situation, as if it were somehow my fault. That hurt more than the money. 3 years after taking out the reverse mortgage, I missed a property tax payment. It wasn't intentional. I had simply run out of money. I thought I could catch up the next quarter. But before I could, I received a notice from Premier Senior Lending. The letter stated that failure to pay property taxes was a violation of the reverse mortgage terms. If I didn't pay immediately, I would be in default. I panicked. I called Richard, finally admitting what I had done. He was furious. Not at me, but at David. He immediately sent me the money to cover the property taxes. He asked how much I owed on the reverse mortgage. When I told him the balance had grown to $95,000, he was stunned. Richard wanted to know why I hadn't told him about this earlier. I said I didn't want to burden him, didn't want him to think less of David. Richard said David had manipulated me, that reverse mortgages were often traps for seniors, that I needed to get out of this loan before it consumed the entire value of my house. But there was no easy way out. To pay off the reverse mortgage, I would need $95,000. I didn't have it. Richard couldn't afford to pay it. The only solution would be to sell the house, use the proceeds to pay off the loan, and find somewhere else to live. I couldn't do it. This house was all I had left of Frank, of my family, of my life. I told Richard I would just be more careful with money, that I would manage somehow. For another 2 years, I managed. Barely. I stopped going out to eat. I stopped buying anything non-essential. I kept the heat low in winter and used fans instead of air conditioning in summer. Richard sent me money when he could, though he had his own family to support. Then I fell. I tripped on the front steps and broke my hip. The surgery and rehabilitation kept me in a facility for 6 weeks. During that time, I wasn't living in the house. When I finally came home, there was a letter from Premier Senior Lending. Because I had been absent from the property for more than 30 consecutive days, they were considering it a permanent move. Under the terms of the reverse mortgage, the loan was now due in full. I called them immediately, explaining that I had been in rehab after surgery, that I was back home now, that this was still my primary residence. They said they would review my case, but that the loan had been triggered and would need to be addressed. 2 months later, I received another letter. They had reviewed the situation and determined that given my age, health issues, and the increasing loan balance, now at $117,000, they were exercising their right to call the loan due. I had 90 days to pay the full balance, or the house would go into foreclosure. I didn't have $117,000. Richard didn't have it either. David, when I finally reached him, said he couldn't help. He was living with friends, barely employed, drowning in his own debts. The bank foreclosed. They sent the eviction notice. And now I had 30 days to leave the home where I had spent more than 4 decades of my life. Richard found me a small apartment near where he lived. He paid the first 3 months' rent. He and his wife helped me pack up a lifetime of belongings, deciding what could fit in a 1-bedroom apartment and what had to be sold or donated. I watched strangers cart away Frank's tools, the dining room table where we had celebrated every holiday, the beds where my children had slept. The house sold at auction for $280,000. After the bank took their $117,000 plus fees and costs, there was about $140,000 left. That money was technically mine, but it disappeared quickly. Moving expenses, apartment deposits, medical bills from the hip surgery. Within 6 months, it was mostly gone. I live in the apartment now. It's clean and safe, and I'm grateful to Richard for helping me. But it's not home. It will never be home. David hasn't spoken to me in over a year. The last time we talked, I asked him if he regretted convincing me to take out that reverse mortgage. He said I had made my own choice, that he had never forced me to do anything. He said I was trying to make him feel guilty for my bad decisions. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should have known better. Maybe I should have researched more carefully, asked more questions, refused to be rushed. Maybe I should have valued my own security over my son's dreams. But I was a mother trying to help her child. That instinct doesn't disappear just because your children are adults. You want to believe in them, to support them, to give them opportunities. You don't want to be the parent who says no when they ask for help. Reverse mortgages aren't inherently evil. For some seniors, they serve a legitimate purpose, but they're complex, risky, and often misunderstood. The interest compounds quickly. The balance can grow to exceed the home's value. Missing property taxes or insurance payments can trigger default. Being absent from the home for more than a year can trigger the loan becoming due. I didn't understand any of that when I signed those papers. I trusted David. I trusted Greg from Premier Senior Lending. I thought I was making a safe choice that would help my son without hurting myself. I was wrong. If you're considering a reverse mortgage, please learn from my mistakes. First, never take one out to give money to adult children. Your financial security must come first. Second, have an independent attorney review all documents before you sign, not someone recommended by the lender or your child. Third, understand that the loan balance will grow much faster than you expect. Fourth, make sure you can afford property taxes, insurance, and maintenance for as long as you plan to stay in the home. Fifth, have a backup plan for if you need extended medical care outside the home. Most importantly, don't let anyone pressure you. If someone is rushing you to sign, that's a red flag. Legitimate financial decisions can wait while you think, research, and consult with trusted advisors. I lost my home because I let love cloud my judgment. I let my son's needs override my own common sense. I let my fear of disappointing him overcome my instinct for self-preservation. And now I'm 74 years old, living in a rented apartment with no real savings and no home to leave to my grandchildren. The legacy Frank and I built together is gone. David got nothing from his business venture except experience in how to fail. I got evicted from my home of 43 years. That's the true cost of the reverse mortgage he convinced me to sign.